Hey there, thanks for listening to Title Talks. I want to remind you that this podcast is a production of PropLogix, and PropLogix is obsessed with making title and closing agents' lives easier. With time and headache saving services like municipal lien searches, HOA research, tax certificates, and way more. We're more than a vendor. We're a partner that single focus is helping your business succeed and making you look like a hero to your customers. Take a look at all we have to offer by visiting proplogix.com. That's proplogix.com. We hope you enjoy this episode. In the latest State of the Title Industry report, we found that 54% of title agents agree or strongly agree that title insurance alternatives pose a threat to their business. We're welcoming back American Land Title Association's Chris Morton, who is here to help us better understand the risks associated with title insurance alternatives and update us on what a Trump administration could mean for the title industry and why ALTA isn't going to let up on the issue. I'm Lindsay Gordon, and this is Title Talks. Hey, Chris, thank you so much for joining us on Title Talks.
Hi, Lindsay. Good to see you, and nice to be with you today.
Let us know, where are you based? Where are you joining us from?
So I'm in Washington, D.C. at ALTA's headquarters downtown in D.C.
Okay, awesome. So we're going to talk about title insurance alternatives and AOLs. Can you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and your role at the American Land Title Association?
Sure, yeah. So my formal title, I'm Senior Vice President of Public Affairs and our Chief Advocacy Officer, and that's a mouthful. But what it really means is I manage our team that works to advocate on behalf of the industry, both at the state and federal levels, and then additionally work to really run a strategic communications effort under a true public affairs framework where we're leveraging every tool we can to tell the story of the industry in a way that connects with policymakers, with consumers, with the public, and folks in our industry to really highlight the benefits and the value of the product that protects property rights and serves our communities.
Yeah. So you're doing the good work for us on behalf of all the members of ALTA and really everyone within the title industry. Awesome. So we're talking about title insurance alternatives. So for people who may be living under a rock, who just truly aren't aware, what are title insurance alternatives?
Yeah, so to give a little bit of context on this, I think really going back, almost 3 years, housing affordability is a problem, right? And it's something that we've all really been concerned about. And so there was a lot of dialogue at the federal level about, what are the ways in which that problem can be addressed or attacked. And, honestly, there's a lot of great ideas that were floated in that process, but there were a lot of bad ones. And I think one of the things that we've gotten caught up in is the notion that somehow title insurance is a driver of the problem of housing affordability. And the reality is we're not. But as part of that, what happened was the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which are secondary market players who engage in purchasing loans to provide liquidity to the marketplace to make more loans. They had an effort where they were looking at things that like title insurance that could potentially be analyzed to find cost savings, and they came up with this notion that attorney opinion letters were the solution, and we were going to push that product more into the marketplace. And so they relaxed some of the standards to allow for AOLs to be purchased in lieu of title insurance on certain loans. Then, sort of subsequent to that, there was this fantastical idea that came up that, well, we should just waive the title insurance on lender policies in its entirety and have the government and taxpayers take the risk for title. And so those are the sort of the two areas when we talk about alternatives to title. It's sort of emerging attorney opinion letters into the market, and then this notion of a pilot program to waive title insurance on certain loans purchased by Fannie Mae. We've been engaged in the conversation and sort of battling because we really see them as kind of ill-informed policy choices that will create actually more risk for consumers and the system, as opposed to really addressing the problems of affordability.
Yeah, you brought up risk. And so if you can talk a
Yeah.
little bit more about some of the other risks maybe associated with alternatives like this.
Yeah, so a lot of I'll take this AOL concept, first and foremost, because if we remember our history, right, attorney opinion letters actually preceded the creation of title insurance. And the reason title insurance came into being was because attorney opinion letters were not protective enough, and they had gaps in coverage, and they didn't do the job necessary to protect property rights for consumers, or to ensure that the lender's sort of mortgage lien position was protected as well. And so it's sort of the old is new again, and now here we are with the move to promote the expansion of those products, which are appropriate in certain markets from a customs perspective, where they're practiced, Southeast Ohio, some of Kentucky. But now to make them, a so-called full alternative to title insurance, I think really creates some problems. And it's really a couple-fold. One is they are less protective inherently, because they don't protect the kinds of risks that are not found in a property record search. And we know, for instance, that things like fraud and forgery have become real problematic issues in the industry. And so when you look at these emerging attorney opinion letters, they do not have the coverage that title insurance has in that area, as an example. So the protections are not as robust. I think the second thing that is really a fallacy is that somehow these products inherently are going to save consumers money. And I think the reason I say that is because if you look at the way title insurance is offered in the marketplace, for instance, in the majority of states, sellers pay for the owner's title insurance policy when you purchase a home. And the only thing the owner then, or the buyer, has to pay for is coverage for the lender policy. And you combine that with things like simultaneous issue discounts, at the closing table, and you're talking in many instances of a cost of a couple few $100s. And so relative to a lot of these AOLs that, they're saying $1,600 flat rate or $1,800, and then we'll pay the broker, basis points or this, that, and the other thing. The marketing is nice, but the reality at the end of the day is you're not getting the same coverage, and you're also potentially not saving a significant amount of dollars. So that's and the final thing I would say, Lindsay, that's really important too, is these products are not regulated in the way that title insurance is. And so there's no reserving requirements that are imposed by state regulators. There's not oversight that takes place, and reviews and audits and those kinds of things. And so the thing that we've been saying is we are a competitive industry. We want everybody in the market who's got a good idea, but let's play by the same set of rules. Bottom line.
When it comes to like an AOL, like if there is an issue that arises, who's covering that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a great question. Some of these products, purport to have some sort of insurance wrap that goes around, that's like an E&O policy that goes around and covers some of these risks. Again, lack of transparency and regulatory oversight prevents us from really digging in and viewing what that looks like. In fact, some of these providers have said to regulators directly in open meetings, that's proprietary. We won't share that. Well, for the title insurance industry, we have to file those things and have, all of our policies open for examination and all of that. So that's important. In the circumstance where there's not perhaps an insurance wrap around that product, then the lender is sort of on the hook, perhaps, or the attorney. And the question is, who's got the cash to sort of pull from if there's a risk or a challenge, right? And so there's a lot of open questions about this, again, because of the way this has sort of gone out into the market in the dark of night, with great marketing, but not a lot of transparency in terms of product structure and protection and those kinds of things. And I'll say this I mentioned this title waiver idea. In that instance, when Fannie Mae, for instance, is taking on the risk of the title risk, that exposure then ultimately goes to them and taxpayers, right? And we remember the 2008 financial crisis and what happened when the government-sponsored enterprises sort of went out and got a little bit beyond their authority and their skis, and we had a situation where taxpayers were on the hook for $200 billion. And so we certainly don't want to go back into a place where that's the problem. So there's a lot of questions.
Yeah, for sure. So a big catalyst at the beginning of this year, I think, for a lot of concern around title insurance alternatives was during Biden's State of the Union address. And he kind of called out title insurance, kind of lumped it into this like junk fee sort of thing, and pointed to, the cost of housing and needing to lower fees to make housing more affordable. So, now that the incoming administration is going to be Republican, Trump got reelected, do you think that our industry is still, we still need to be concerned about these things? Do you feel like there's been some shifting? Or are you guys kind of just like monitoring, sort of seeing what's going to be coming down?
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, we are here to advocate for the industry and the consumers we serve, and also to make sure that policy ideas are well informed. And so we're not making the assumption here that all of a sudden, just because we're transitioning into a new administration, that we're going to take our foot off the gas and in any way stop our advocacy. The reality is we will see what the players look like and what the environment shifts to. Perhaps there's an opportunity to have, I think there will be, quite frankly, an opportunity to have more informed discussion about these topics and less sort of reflexive regulatory sort of attacks on various industries, including our own. So we're hopeful, and we look forward to engaging with whomever comes into various positions in these regulatory agencies. But what I'll say is, right now, attorney opinion letters have moved into the market, so they're out there being marketed. This pilot waiver is on the way to being operationalized in certain areas, and so we are focused on the work in front of us and making sure that we're educating policymakers, and it's been effective. And I'll say this, a couple things. The problem with where we are, particularly with the title waiver program recently, is, for instance, we've had dozens of members of Congress, Democrats and Republicans, to the Biden administration, FHFA, to all of those sort of powers that be, say this is a bad idea. Consumers and lenders will be at risk. It doesn't, solve the problem of affordability, and it really could make us more at risk in terms of the housing finance system. And more importantly, the regulatory process was completely behind closed doors. We never saw any kind of public process where there was a comment period, where people and stakeholders were asked to provide data. And in fact, no data has been shown as to why this is a good idea from the regulatory side of things. And so that's the reason why a lot of these policymakers on the Hill have pushed back. And not only have they pushed back, Attorneys general have pushed back. We've gotten insurance regulators who are asking questions. State insurance legislators have written letters. So, they see this as an affront to the state-based regulation of insurance. And that's their role and that's their authority. And they know it because they oversee it. So we've had a lot of good dialogue with people who want to be thoughtful and have an approach that's open. But unfortunately, from this point, we've not seen that same sort of receptivity from those who are putting forward these proposals. So we're not going to let up. We're hopeful that we'll have, a much more informed dialogue. But until then, we're proceeding accordingly.
Has this year kind of shown us as an industry in ALTA that like the average consumer still doesn't really get what title insurance is or the work that goes into issuing a policy? Like, has this been really revelatory, or like I think it's long been something that we've struggled with. I know Alta has lots of programs to try and educate home buyers and that sort of thing, but do you feel like it kind of brought to light, like, oh wow, the average person still really has no idea why this is so important, why it's so beneficial?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we all need to look ourselves in the mirror and say we have work to do to better educate and explain the value of who we are and what we provide. And I think we should all be really proud of what it is that we do, because it does, protect consumers' largest investment they most will ever make. And I know from just my own engagement with our members and the broader industry, people are proud to go to work every day and to serve their communities and serve, potential home owners and current homeowners. And so we've got to be sort of loud and proud. I think the great thing that this whole experience has provided is that platform to do just that. And so we've taken it really sort of upon ourselves at the association to work really hard at being better communicators, communicators of our value and our value proposition, and speaking not just to each other in the industry, which is easy, but to speak more externally to consumers and to policymakers and those who have a real impact on the work that we do. And we've conducted a pretty targeted public affairs education campaign over the last several months in a couple of years, where we're really talking about, we are the protectors of property rights. We are the guardians of the American dream. We are all these things. And this is why you need to, work with us. We've also, we've got a program called HOP, which is the home ownership, education and marketing effort that we do with our members. And for the last year, we've translated a lot of our material and information on title insurance and what title agents and underwriters do into, I think, 8 or 9 languages, so that consumers in all sorts of communities can understand why they have to make the choice to protect their property rights and work with us. So we're really trying to be responsive and creative in the way that we reach out. And we need everybody's voice. And so I'll say to those who are listening today, really work with us and engage with us, because you are on the ground and you know best, what you're hearing and how best to connect with members of your community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to talk a little bit about like a couple of other initiatives that Alta has spurred between, like, I know there were several reports released this year that you guys did
Yeah.
and you had commissioned to like bring to light, just how much work goes into like actually issuing a policy and sort of like that hidden work. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I appreciate you raising that, because we have, in addition to the communications efforts, we've really tried very assiduously this year to put out, data and information that's going to help people understand. And so, yeah, I think you're mentioning we did a study in partnership with NDP Analytics, looking at all of the curative work that goes into making sure folks have clear title and ownership rights on their property. And what we found in a survey, a representative national survey of folks in the industry, is that the average transaction from opening to close, it's 22 hours of work that goes into that transaction on it's just sort of a standard transaction. All files require at least two curative actions. More than 2/3 of files require at least four curative actions. So there's a lot of effort that goes into this. And for at least, almost 40%, so 36% of all transactions require substantial curative work that looks, if you look at that, it's on average 45 hours, so more than double the amount of hours in a standard transaction. And so I think that really indicates, what really does go into making sure that folks have clear property rights. I would say a couple other things in terms of the research that we've done that I think point to the value of the industry. One, we did an economic impact analysis with EY Quest, that's Ernst & Young's quantitative and economic statistics team. And what that showed, that the industry provides 155,000 jobs nationwide. That's just direct jobs in the industry. $30 billion of our industry provides $30 billion to the bottom line GDP of the United States. And these are, as you know well, 90% of our industry businesses are small businesses. And the population of employees is predominantly female, over 70%. And so we have a story again to tell in the data there about just how important we are to the economy of the United States and the job market. And then the final thing I'll say is we looked at, because there's a lot of critiques we've seen, again, ill-informed from our perspective about claims and not paying claims and this, that, and the other thing. Well, we did an analysis of claims with Milliman, the actuarial firm, over the last decade. And what we found was, and this goes back to why these attorney opinion letters or waivers of title are so problematic, 30% of losses and claims experienced over the last decade were for risks that were not found in a public record search that are covered, by title insurance. And, a subcategory, 21% of all claims related expenses and losses were for fraud and forgery. And we've seen that category of risk double in terms of claims expense and loss in the last 2 years alone. And then you sort of look at all of that, and the bottom line of this, and this is where this is, I think, sort of the exclamation point. Despite all of that, our cost of coverage has gone down 5% in the last 5 years alone. So we're actually reducing the cost and making ourselves more affordable to the American people.
Wow. Yeah. My company is in the space where we are looking at things that are not necessarily recorded in the public record. And in the state of Florida, people always get a municipal lien search. That's something that's not necessarily going to come back in a title search. We do HOA work. Those things, don't necessarily come back in a title search, so it's like a lot of risk that I think it's standard practice to discover ahead of issuing a title policy, this title production process, that title agents are doing as a matter of course throughout their day and closings. So it's like, I think it's just people are just not aware how much goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah, and that's on us. I mean, we have more work to do, as I said. I think it's really important that we speak to all those things. And I really appreciate, I'll just say, thank you to PropLogix for, being a leader in the industry to really, make sure that we're getting that information out. Your State of the Title Industry report, has been tremendous. And so we appreciate the partnership we have with you all.
Absolutely. So, my last question is what can, the average title agent do? I own a small 5-person title company. Our report found that was the majority of people responding. With small companies, they may not have a huge, broad scope of impact. Like, how can they help? What can they do to educate consumers and lawmakers about why title insurance is so important?
Yeah, it's a great question, and the short answer is they can do a lot. And I think, when we advocate, like for myself or the team at ALTA, I think we do a great job. But the reality is the story that the expert professional in the community who is a constituent of a member of Congress or a state legislator, they're going to have even greater impact because they're on the ground, they're doing the work, they're working hard to provide value in the community. But there's several things. So I'd say engagement with your state land title associations is really important at the state level, because as a state regulated business, that's important. So if you're not involved there, please get involved. That'll help you engage with your insurance regulators, folks like your attorneys general and those kinds of things. We can help with that, but your state land title association can as well. I would say from a federal side, come to ALTA's Advocacy Summit in the spring every year. This year, it's, I think, early May in Washington, D.C., where we go to Capitol Hill and we tell that story. And then, continue that education back home and build a relationship with your member of Congress. And if you have a relationship already and we don't know about it, please tell us, because we can benefit from that. And then I would say, use the tools that ALTA has available to you, both from an advocacy perspective, things like the Title Action Network. Join that. You can send messages to your legislators in the states when an issue comes up, or at the federal level in Congress. But we have tools to help you grow your business too, and that's really important as well. So engage with our committees, reach out to Taylor Spoladoro, who's our membership person. She can get you hooked up, but there's so much to do and so many opportunities. I think just starting with raising your hand and saying, I want to help, and we'll point you in the right direction.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll be sure to include links to different resources from the American Land Title Association in our show notes, so that people can access, whatever they might need to get started. Is there anything else that you want to touch on that I haven't covered?
I would just say, again, to all your folks listening, and to you and the folks at PropLogix, thank you so much. I mean, this year has been a hard one economically. We've got a lot of challenges, obviously, that we've faced on the policy front, but we've come out and persevered, and we're stronger because of it. And I think this year ahead is going to be even more important to raise our voices and do the work. So thanks for the platform, and we look forward to partnering with you all going forward.
For resources discussed in this episode, you can visit our show notes at proplogix.com/resource/podcasts. This episode has been brought to you by PropLogix, the leading experts in lien searches, HOA research, tax certificates, and more. Learn more about how PropLogix can make your business more efficient and boost your growth at proplogix.com. That's PROPLOGIX.com. Until next time, happy closing.